section of Anglican theologians. We are going to concentrate on our province in Kenya. And we are going to particularly look at three great churchmen and theologians. We are going to look at Bishop Henry Okullu, Bishop Alaxender Muge, and Bishop David Gitari, who later became the Archbishop of the province of Kenya. Now, let's understand their person and their theology. We will begin with Bishop Henry Okullu. He has been sometimes called the Amos of Kenya. Amos was a prophet of social justice. And Henry Okullu was a bishop who advocated for social justice. Let me say that Henry Okullu was born in Kenya, later worked with the railways in Uganda. He was an editor of a magazine called The New Dawn, The New Day, a Christian magazine in Uganda. Later, he felt cold and he went to study in America at the Virginia Theological Seminary. This is where he studied and he got a Bachelor of Divinity. Later, in 1971, he was installed as the provost of the first black provost of All Saints Cathedral. Later, he became the Bishop of Maseno South, where he served until his retirement in 1994. How do we understand Okullu? He was known for political engagement. Okullu's political theology utilized the biblical message to address social, political context and situation. That no wonder is called the Amos. He was able to address real issues and he spoke with conviction. Right from the Kenyatta administration to Moi's administration, he spoke with conviction. He also believed in development, participatory development. Participatory development, he championed development that engaged the people. People-owned processes. He had his roots, he was evangelical and ecumenical in perspective. He argued that the church needed holistic development. Development was critical. He initiated the first mega project, among the first mega projects of the church, the Alpha Center in Kisumu, that is generating income to propagate the gospel. He spoke against the injustices, championed for human rights. He fought against the one-party state of Kenya, and he championed for multi-party democracy and the repeal of the Section 2A from the Kenyan Constitution. He hammered out his issues in the political arena. His sermons were well written. You may know that he came from a journalistic background. Henry Okullu was a prophet for social justice. He was also evangelical, and he emphasized development in the church. He said that the church and the state are distinct entities. His book, The Church and the State. The church and the state are distinct institutions created by God to perform distinct functions. That means the church cannot be the state, and the state cannot be the church. He championed for the separation of the state from from the church, and the church should not be held under siege by the state. From there, I'm going to look at Bishop Alaxender Kipsang Muge. Bishop Alaxender Kipsang Muge. Bishop Alaxender Kipsang Muge was born in 1948. He was from the Camelilo clan. His mother, Anne Chepkoskei, was known as the woman of the dirty roads. That implied that she was a lady who trekked long distances to look for firewood to meet the basic needs of the family. It is interesting to note that Alaxender Kipsang Arap Muge did not allow himself to be subjected to the traditional initiation rites of the Nandi. He rejected it, much to the surprise of the elders of his clan. He was a pensive, reflective, and inquisitive young man. He loved the seclusion of the forest. His father saw a talent in him. That's why he took him to Tangaratwet Primary School and later Kapoimu in Nandi. From 1959 to 1964. He proceeded to the secondary school in Uganda in 1966. But because of the political upheavals in Uganda, he came back to Kenya and joined the General Service Unit, the dreaded GSU. And he served for 6 years. And I want to say, on 25th of October 1970, at St. Michael's and All Angels Church in Ruiru, Reverend John Kago preached from Luke chapter 19 about the encounter of Jesus with Zacchaeus. And he was touched and he was converted. He gave his life to Jesus Christ, dedicated himself to the Ushirika Fellowship or to Kutendereza group. He felt cold and he resigned that year from GSU and he joined St. Philip's Theological College in Maseno. In 1975, at St. Stephen's Jogoo Road, he was made a deacon. The following year, he was ordained priest and appointed a curate at the same church. Later, he moved to St. Mark's, Westland, as the vicar. And in 1979, he got a scholarship and he went to study a bachelor's degree at London Bible College. London Bible College, because of his eloquence, he was an eloquent speaker, articulate in London. Because of his eloquency, he was made the secretary of the Pan-African Students Organization in the university. And later, he created a rapport with many of his friends who later became useful in his ministry. While he graduated with Bachelor of Arts in Divinity from the London School and returned in June 1983. When he returned on the 1st of July 1982, he was made an assistant provost at All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi. You will note that two of these bishops that we have discussed ministered at All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi. Later in 1983, he became, on June 5th, 1983, he became the first bishop of the Diocese of Eldoret. The diocese was small, with around 18 parishes and 2 diocesan staff. We must note that Muge, from his Tukutendereza background and from his conversion, you must note that Muge was engaged and threw himself literally to evangelism. He personally participated in evangelism and mission, and they planted many churches, and there was a phenomenal growth from 18 to 24, from 18 to 28 parishes after a very short time. Also, the number of clergy and diocesan staff workers increased. He did not only preach in missions, but he also preached in the youth conferences. And for his love of the youth conferences and his commitment to the youth ministry, he was made the chair of the province, Cairo, until his demise in 1990. He emphasized 3 things: mission, development, and education. That permeated throughout his ministry. Mission, evangelism, which is evangelism, and he also emphasized development and education. The other thing is that Muge was also a very courageous man. He challenged the political status quo. And it was reported in the media, he was the first person to ask the once powerful minister, who is he? He was not a person who was bent to be emasculated by tribal affiliations. Therefore, he considered himself a church leader, and he did not succumb to the tribal machinations. He was a church leader par excellence. And I want to say that he believed in the social transformation through the preaching of the gospel. He condemned the evils of land grabbing, corruption, and exploitation of the poor. He even challenged the university students. He said that they condemned corruption when they are in the university, but when they join the civil service, they become more corrupt. And even alluded, I remember, to the president of Ghana, first president of Ghana, who was popular, but later because of corruption became unpopular, and he was removed from the throne. I want to say that Alaxender Kipsang Arap Muge was evangelical, and his Bible interpretation was traditional. In 1990, before his demise, he went to America, and he condemned homosexuality, much to the chagrin of the priest who invited him to the parish. Why did he condemn homosexuality? Because he had the evangelical conviction that the Bible is authoritative in matters of orthodoxy and praxis. And since the Bible is authoritative, he could not interpret the Bible as liberal theologians to permit homosexuality. He condemned it as being wrong. The other interesting thing about Muge, he did not only condemn the corruption by the politicians and the state, he also condemned corruption perpetuated by the church, and he called the church to accountability. The other thing he condemned nepotism that was perpetuated at the NCCK. In the 1990s, he questioned why the staffing of NCCK was skewed towards a particular tribe. He wanted his colleagues who are championing for human rights to support him, but they could not, because, as Muge said, blood was thicker than water. That is Alaxender Muge. He challenged the president in 1987 when he declared that there was no famine in West Pokot. He was barricaded by the police, but he managed to go to West Pokot. He challenged the president in public. And I want to say Muge was a fearless prophet. If Okullu was an Amos, I think that Muge was an Elijah who could challenge Ahab face to face. And he challenged the excesses, not only of the state, but also of the church. We were honored to have him. His death was through a road accident. And it is always debatable whether he was assassinated or it was a pure road accident. I must say that it is inconclusive to argue on both sides. He may have been assassinated. He may have just got into a tragic road accident. But whatever side you take, it does not eliminate the fact that Muge was either a martyr or a witness, a martyreo. He witnessed of Christ, spoke boldly, and he was not under siege by the politician. It will take a long time to get someone of the caliber of Alaxender Muge. I pray that we'll get people to emulate him and people who are going to be charismatic and exert positive influence and excitement in the church like this great servant of God. Lastly, I look at David Gitari. David Gitari was born in 1937. And he was the third Archbishop of Kenya. He attended the famous Kangaro High School before attending the Nairobi University. You must note that he studied education. He did not have a theological background, but he became a theologian par excellence. That's why I tell you, it doesn't matter your background, God can still use you. He was ordained into priesthood in 1972, and at 37 in 1975, he was consecrated and enthroned the Bishop of Mount Kenya East. We must understand the focus and the emphasis of Gitari's ministry. Number one, theological education was very critical to him. That's why he started St. Andrew's Kabare, College of Theology and Development. Theology and theological studies was very, very, very critical to Gitari. When he was the Archbishop, he revived theological institutions, and provincial theological colleges were revamped. So theology and theological education was very critical to him. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that during his time, he and Muge emphasized something that is called CCS. They started CCS almost at the same time. These days, it is now known as Anglican Development Services. They emphasize both for development and holistic ministry. And you'll find that the ADS in Mount Kenya East, Kirinyaga, Mbere, Embu is very, very strong until they have hospitals and they are able to fund part of their projects and activities. The other thing that was critical about him is evangelism. And he did evangelism in universities. He emphasized evangelism at the universities and preaching in his parish. Evangelism was very critical. And I wonder these days, evangelism has not had such a focus as it had that particular time. The other thing that was very critical, he believed in liturgical renewal. And the prayer book, the new prayer book that we have, is a product. The new prayer book that we have is a product of Gitari's initiative and effort. It was his retirement gift to the Anglican Communion. He believed in liturgical renewal. He was an editor and writer of many books, theological books. The other thing that is very critical about him is that he was the chairman of the board, theological, provincial board of theological education for a long time, and the chairman of St. Paul's United Theological College for a long time. He also was very, very instrumental. He believed in ecumenism, that is NCCK. He was the chair of NCCK for quite some time. And he was also a prophet of social justice, just as Alaxender Muge and Henry Okullu. He championed against the Mulolongo system of voting. And he advocated for multi-party democracy. He also condemned political assassination. He worked as an Archbishop to restore peace and to resolve wrangles in most of the dioceses that bedeviled the church during that time. He was critical in enhancing theological education by extension. And there was a poem that was sung about Gitari that I want to conclude. Gitari ni hodari, Gitari ni generali, Gitari ni hodari, Gitari ni generali, Gitari ni daktari, na Gitari ni hatari. Archbishop Nzimbi quoted that poem, song about Gitari. And I tend to agree with him that Gitari ni daktari, Gitari ni hodari, Gitari ni hatari. He was a tough churchman. He died later at Mata Hospital. You remember that these people, these three church fathers, were unique bishops in the Anglican Communion. And their influence is still on up to this particular time. When we look at them combined, number one, they were very humble people. They lived a humble, simple lifestyle. That's why they were not dependent on political handouts to sustain their lavish lifestyle. I am told that Bishop Muge liked the cafeteria way of serving, and he would pick a plate and go and get served and go and eat. This high table concept was not appealing to him. Henry Okullu said that when I die, I don't want in my grave, I don't want any plaster, any cement, any flour. Just lay me in a simple grave. In a simple grave. And that's what he did. They were very simple church men who had enormous influence in the church. Number two, they were evangelical. Evangelism was very critical to them. Number three, they believed in holistic evangelism. That is the proclamation of the gospel and social action. And they established churches. In all the three, development played a key and pivotal role. In Okullu, he established the Alpha House that up to today is generating income for the church to support evangelism. ABS that is still vibrant and robust was established by Muge and Gitari. Just as you may never forget, is that Muge, among his last business transactions before he went to be with the Lord, he bought the Bishop Muge Guest House and Conference Center, 43 acres land to support church work. He used even to farm in Narok. And ironically, one of our students is the chair of the board of ADS, not of ADS, of Bishop Muge Guest House and Conference Center. It is our honor that up to today, as we discuss this man, he has made an impact in the church. But up to today, the church is generating income from what he initially started. And ADS, even I served in ADS as a board member, later retired, and one of us is still serving in ADS because of what was established by Muge. All of them focused on development. And all of them were able to dare the status quo. As we go to election, I conclude by saying, can we have another Okullu? Can we have another Gitari? Can we have another Muge to challenge the status quo and the morass in the political spectrum that is tribal, ethnic-oriented, and where we have people who are compromised? May the Lord enable us to have theologians who will stand like the three. In the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I have concluded.